أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر الله
لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونتوب إليه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون عباد الله أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله أما بعد. So today we're commemorating and remembering 76 years of the Nakba. And it's the Nakba, while we say it's 76 years, in reality is much longer than 76. Because the dispossession of the Palestinians begins with the arrival of the British in Palestine in 1917. And precisely on December 10th and 11th, 1917, that the British arrived in Palestine to begin the modern period of colonizing Palestine, which the British actually describe it as coming to an end of the Crusades. So literally the British newspapers had a headline, Jerusalem captured after 672 years of Muslim rule. And in another saying, now come the end of the Crusades. So it's very important for us to have a sense of history in terms of the Nakba, in terms of what were the interests behind pursuing Palestine by both the British and later on all Western powers. We tend to think in terms of history of Palestine in a short periods. Now the British, who were the empire that ruled much of the world in late 19th century into the early part of the 20th century. It used to be said that the British Empire, that the sun never sits upon the British Empire. And now we know that the British barely have any sun. They have to go down to Greece to get a suntan so they could turn pink. But in general, if you looked at the world in 1985, not 1985, 1914 actually, 85% of the world was a colonial possession. You were either a subject of the British, the French, the Dutch, the Italian, the German, the Spanish, and therefore 85% of the world population was subject to colonization. Now, one thing actually in here for us in the Americas, Columbus, when he sailed trying to reach India, in his memoirs, in his writing, the reason that he wanted to find an alternative route to India in order to actually collect as much gold and silver, so he would actually fund a crusade to conquer Jerusalem coming from the east. And literally, in his memoirs, that was part of the inspiration for the project to seek an alternative route to India. And we think that we are here, that the history of Palestine, the history of the Muslim world, the history of India is not connected to Columbus and the history of Columbus. So there's a whole book that actually details and looks at Columbus's memoirs and notes during his journey, and why this journey that he took funded by European powers. Coming a little bit more to the British were thinking in colonial terms. The British wanted to secure trade routes because they were pillaging India from its resources. The British have taken out of India $45 trillion worth of wealth. When the British arrived into India, and we have the East India Company, which actually ruled the whole country. If it sounds like Amazon today are ruling much of the world, East India Company, right, literally was ruling over all of India. When they arrived to India, India was 24% of the global GDP. When they moved and ended their colonial control of India, they reduced it to 3%, pillaging every last resources from it. And I know some of us, when the British royal family have a wedding, everybody stays up at night to actually take a look and see the dresses, the gold, the silver, the diamonds. I never seen a colonial cartel showing all of the things that they stole and people actually watching and thinking that is actually interesting. So literally much of the wealth that you see in there was colonized, and the British were thinking about how to move their colonial loot throughout the trade routes from the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea, and then the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 in order for all of these resources to be sent out to Britain at the time. And that has not changed, even though that the shift from the British to the Americans to Europeans. Just a couple of days ago, off the shore of Gaza, there's a massive gas field. The estimate of the gas in that region is about $500 billion worth of natural gas. Why is it important? Because Israel, with Egypt and other countries, have signed a deal to explore that natural gas, because Europe wants to have an alternative gas supply away from Russia. And if they are able to explore that natural gas in the Eastern Mediterranean, then it's a very easy pipeline and transport of natural gas into Europe. So resources are still paramount as we speak today in relation to what is occurring in relations to Gaza and Palestine in general. And in that as well, we have many different participants. Now, I know that when we speak about Palestine, we tend to try to understand what is taking place in the moment. And it's very important to understand what is taking place in the moment. Palestinians are not only facing Zionism in Israel, they're also facing the Arab and Muslim world that has not responded to support of the Palestinians. Yesterday, there was the Arab League meeting that took place, and they had a summit, and I'll use the summit in the Arabic word summit rather than the English word summit. The Arabic word summit means silence. The English word means a gathering. So they had a summit, Arabic summit meeting, and they actually put out a communique to say that the Arab world is ready to send a joint Arab force to secure Gaza. Now, mind you, not now, after the so-called hostilities, so they're thinking about after what Israel does, leave no building up, possibly in their war effort, that the Arab world is going to send a force to secure Israel from the Palestinians. That's basically what the offer is. And they all are ready to send the troops, mashallah, in between watching the match of Ronaldo scoring a goal, we're going to send the troops to Gaza to try to secure Israel. And not the ironic part is that Palestinian Authority is also part of it. That the Palestinian Authority is agreeing or accepting this as a part. So not only that we're facing Israel, facing the Arab world, the Muslim world, there is 57 Muslim majority states. None of them been able to send independently a bottle of water, let alone anything else, to the Palestinians. So that's it. We also are facing Western Europe. All the colonial powers are lining up behind Israel. Not surprising. They never went through a 12-step program to recover from colonialism. Like we're in the postmodern period, post-colonialism, they're still thinking in colonial terms. All right. So literally, the British, the French, the German, the Italians, the Spanish are actually shifting their position, but the Dutch, the major colonial powers, are still beholden and supporting, and then the United States as well. So that's the landscape that we are looking at. Now, I want to speak a little bit on what the students are facing today on college campuses and the distraction that are being directed at the student movement. Now, just to understand, and I always say, I want to thank Columbia University President Minouche Shafiq. Right? Really, we express our gratitude, in a comical sense, but we express our gratitude to her. She was invited to give testimony in Congress. It's not every time that a president of a university is asked to present at Congress. Over 2,000 presidents. It's literally, you made it to the top league when you're invited to Congress to give presentation and to speak. And she went there. She did very well. She threw the Columbia University professors under the bus, Zionist bus, but nevertheless, it's a bus. She threw Joseph Mas'ad, Palestinian writer and author, under the bus as a faculty. She threw the students under the bus. So from all indications, she did really well. If you're watching Fox, she did really well. And she thought that she made it. And she came back from DC, ready to crack bones, ready to call the New York Police Department. And yesterday there was a leaked chat from WhatsApp that had some of the top donors, Ackerman, the CEO of Starbucks. I hope you're not drinking Starbucks anymore, right? So the CEO of Starbucks and a few others, they were actually calling both on the mayor and on the university to crack down, and they did. Right? So from all indications, she was ready to move up. Maybe she would have been called to become a secretary of a department. Maybe the secretary of nothingness is always open. So she was really ready to move up. And overnight, the next day after they cracked down on the students at Columbia, almost 80 different universities had an encampment. So your response in here, the encampment, is directly, as an outcome of the crackdown on Columbia University, right? Thinking that if they just really use power, if they silence the students, that this would be it, and Netanyahu will be happy, because Netanyahu the next day said, look what's happening at the universities. So our chancellors and presidents getting their order actually correctly, not from higher education, but from higher settler colonialism and from Netanyahu. As of today, almost 180 universities have encampments. And almost every university has some type of organizing on Palestine. They thought that by calling the police, by cracking down on the students, that they will actually be silencing the movement. But the response, similar to the anti-apartheid movement, right? Actually, in here you had, during the anti-apartheid movement, you had an encampment here at UC Davis, right? And the Third World Forum organized during that period. So there's a long history of organizing, and the response have been almost in a similar, identical way of repression resulted in a response. Now, I want to point to some of the things that they are directing at the student movement. One, they're asking the question, why are the students mobilizing on Palestine, and why didn't they mobilize for Syria? Why didn't they mobilize for Tibet? Why didn't they mobilize? Why is it that they're mobilizing? This notion or this question is trying to imply that most likely all of you students are being motivated by deep-held anti-Semitism because you are actually targeting Israel and leaving everybody alone. And then their pet peeve saying, why are you not mobilizing to support the people of Iran, right? Now, I know Johnny come lately have not read, but many of us were actually protesting during the Syria civil war. Many of us actually protested in relation to Myanmar. Many of us actually protested in relation to Central America. I organized for Central American Solidarity Movement in El Salvador. Last time I checked, there wasn't people in El Salvador saying, Allahu Akbar, for us to mobilize. And many of us actually organized in relation to South Africa. I know in here in UC Davis, students mobilized for the environment. Organized for, at Berkeley, we hug trees all the time. Right? So we mobilize for students who are hugging the tree. So this is what you call a red herring in order to say that you are deeply motivated by trying to target Israel as an exception to the mobilization that occurred and trying to point out all this. Now, one other response says, well, if you're concerned about Syria, I did not see Jonathan Greenblatt leading the protests for Syria. If you did, then you have the right to speak. But in essence, they're trying to literally say that the student movement is basically motivated by deep anti-Semitism rather than by a deep concern to what is taking place. Second, why the students are mobilizing? Well, because almost in every campus, Israel is intertwined into the campus. You have all kinds of academic exchange programs, right? You have visiting faculty, you have students, you have research of this and that taking place and normalizing Israel on every campus. Last time I checked, we don't have President Bashar Assad of Syria having a designated chair in his name in the Department of Upper Learning in Arts and Culture. But we have all these programs that enforce and actually insist on intertwining ourselves with Israel in so many different ways. So why we're concerned? Because it's right there for us on campus. Third, I know there's an organization we call AIPAC, which has considerable impact on our political arena. Right? AIPAC has pledged to spend $100 million to target progressive congressional leaders. They actually wanted to spend $20 million to try to unseat Rashida Tlaib. They actually offered the $20 million for somebody to run against her. The person refused that $20 million on Twitter or X. They offered the $20 million again to another person. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Does anybody know if Bashar al-Assad have an AIPAC type of an organization in the United States that purchases our political elites? That the 14 senators that threatened the International Court of Justice of punishing them if they actually issued an arrest warrant for a war criminal, Netanyahu. Anybody knows this? If you do, please forward me, including Jonathan Greenblatt, AGC, AIPAC, if you know that Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, has a lobby group in Washington, D.C. that is spending $100 million to unseat congressional leaders, please, I would accept your evidence, and I will tell the students that you need to rally in opposition to what is taking place. So that's third. We have APAC, right, in there. Fourth, I hope that you saw the police force that was sent on UCLA, the police force that was sent in Emory University, police force sent on Austin, Texas. Yesterday, the police force that was used in UCI, right? Now, I want you to know that the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, and I actually removed the I call them the Defamation League, that's their rightful name, has a police exchange program. This police exchange program takes our police officers in here and in different places to train them of how to actually deal with policing. And usually they come back with deeply held Islamophobic, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim perspectives. And as such, this is actually an exchange program. Now, for the person who Johnny come lately says, why did you to protest Bashar al-Assad or others? Do we have any organization in the United States that sends police force to try to train with Bashar al-Assad in Syria on how to police democratic society like ours? Again, I wait for people to deliver the evidence. If you saw such evidence, I'm a scholar and researcher. If you have the evidence, please send it to me. You could get my email, right, at UC Berkeley. If not, I know a lot of people will deliver it to me. If you have it, please send it to me about a police exchange program, right, that have this material there. Now, there's a bigger piece in there, which is the fifth item. I hope that you notice that President Biden, right, just delayed one shipment of, I think it's the K-8400 bomb. I am not a specialist in bomb making or anything. The only thing I'm a specialist in is Knafi, but that's the point. Right? So Biden delayed one shipment, right, of bombs. And then 3 days later, he sent another $1 billion of weapons on top of $26 billion of actually a total for Israel is about $40 billion. Annually, we give Israel $3.8 billion. So why the students are mobilizing? Well, we're paying for it. And if I'm paying for it from my tax money, might as well I need to speak about it. And I don't need to check with Netanyahu if it actually upsets his, what you call, you know, he gets upset and he gets emotional that you students are actually talking about it. If he having what you call difficulty, we actually send some political therapists for him to say, if you're getting our money, our tax money, might as well you have to take our opinion of actually engaging in genocide as we see that is unfolding. So we're paying for it. And that's why the students are mobilizing and speaking about it on a regular basis. And they should have the right to speak about something that they are paying. Sixth item. I know there's a lot, but sixth item, which is also very, very important. Israel and your Zionist supporters say that Israel represents our values, and we have shared values. Now, there might some, in certain circles in the U.S., they have some people that share their value of engaging in wanton violence against Arab, Muslims, Palestinians, third world people. But if we're talking about democratic society, freedom-based society, there is no shared values that we could actually point to when you are actually attacking and bombing civilians. There is no shared value if you destroyed 11 universities. There is no shared values if you destroyed 36 hospitals and you bombed hospitals. There is no shared values of 15,000 kids, babies, and children being murdered. 2 women being killed every day. There is no shared values. There is no shared values of attacking UNRWA and humanitarian relief. There is no shared value of allowing settlers, right, to attack and burn trucks, air trucks coming. So what are the shared value? Unless you have Lindsey Graham as a representative of the shared value who thinks the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a high point of Western civilization. And there are people thinking that Oppenheimer, which we had at UC Berkeley, is actually a role model. If that's your argument, Lindsey Graham, and those who literally peddle in this, then welcome to the moral bankruptcy and total abdication of any standard, right, that you could actually have. So this is, again, the arguments that are being directed in order for us to respond, because it seems that the mainstream media reflect and peddles in these arguments in order to detract from what is taking place at this particular time in the history of the student movement, which is making transformative change and reached a tipping point. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم استغفروه. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونتوب إليه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. So what I want to say is that the tipping point for Palestine have arrived in the United States, and it is actually a mobilization across religious, ethnic, racial, ideological lines in a way that never seen before. One of the unique places that we need to actually speak about is Humboldt, right? Cal State Humboldt, right? And I don't know if anyone have noticed, Cal State Humboldt, they can't say there are all these Muslims in there, right? You basically, or there are so many students of color in there. Literally, to find somebody with dark complexion, you have to put double sunglasses in order just to see a shade of darker complexion in there, right? They've been holding and having a takeover of a building as a result of their engagement in Palestine and Gaza. That shows you that is a different type of configuration that is taking place. If you think about UC Santa Cruz, I was there just a few days back. The Arab Muslim Palestinians is a very small group, maybe 10, 15 out of 300 that are there, all from all walks of lives and all backgrounds. And what is taking place, literally people are negotiating differences, are arriving at understanding, are making different horizons and visions of what the society is about. And literally we're seeing the America that we hope for literally being birthed in front of our eyes. What is challenging for Genocide Joe Biden, right, is that 81% of those aged 18 to 35 are not interested or are not supporting him in his policy on Gaza, which means that you cannot actually come into the 2024 election, right? Because in November, we will remember that he is losing the young population, and whatever his electoral strategy is about, it seems completely inconsiderate of both the youthful population, but also in critical states, whether it's Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Again, Michigan is hanging on a thread. 114,000 voted uncommitted, right, in Michigan. Some say it's about 110. Trump won Michigan by only 10,000 votes. And in general, Biden completely did not address the Arab Muslim Palestinian needs in Michigan. Literally, you get 10,000 votes in Michigan by attending one Arab wedding in there. And the critical issue for Michigan today, in terms of the large concentration of Arab Palestinian Muslims and their allies, is what's your position on Gaza? And you cannot peddle, on the one hand, try to say we're going to deal with Islamophobia while sending bombs to Israel. Sending bombs to Israel is Islamophobic. Supporting Netanyahu is Islamophobic. Trying to actually not have empathy toward the Palestinians is Islamophobic. To actually discount the number of people killed by casting doubt on the Gaza Ministry of Health figures is Islamophobic. Not to call the father of Wadi' Fayoumi in Chicago, Illinois, and say that you did is Islamophobic. And the fact that they sent the FBI to try to begin to visit Arab Muslims, Palestinians is Islamophobic. The fact that day before yesterday, Ilan Pape, a historian, right, coming to Detroit, and you have an interrogation of Ilan Pape at the border in Detroit, nonetheless, is Islamophobic because you're targeting also Jewish allies of Arab Muslims and Palestinians. So we're not interested in what you call public relations from Biden. Well, we want substantive policy, and the substantive policy also relate to our divestment in here, our academic boycotts in here, our calling for ending complicity in genocide and changing our relationship with this university. So we need substantive steps. We're no longer accepting PR steps. We're no longer accepting what I often call it the falafel hummus type of politics, where there's just somebody comes in there and basically says Salamu alaikum in debauchery of Arabic and says, I like your food. Wait, I don't care whether you like our food or not. Go get a hot dog. What I want is to see the policy. What is the policy? What did you vote? What weapons you sent? What funding and donation you got from AIPAC? And how your position is reflective of those priorities. If not, I'm not interested. We already have a genocide, Joe. Don't threaten us with what you call with Trump as a way to try to play our emotions. On the one hand, you're supporting genocide. On the other hand, you threaten us with the possibility of a Muslim ban. All right. So again, we have to be very clear on our priority in order to understand where we are at. We continue to do the work, continue to organize, continue to mobilize, and we will see a free Palestine in our lifetime. And I said, remember the Nakba, but prepare for a free Palestine. So remember the Nakba and prepare for a free Palestine, because we will see a free Palestine in our lifetime. Free Palestine is a state of mind that is only awaiting for us to actualize it. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم إني داع فأمنوا اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا بالخير شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي بالخير ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من وليت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت ربنا ردنا الإسلام ردا جميلا ربنا ردنا الإسلام ردا جميلا ربنا ردنا الإسلام ردا جميلا اللهم خفف عن إخواننا المسلمين في كل مكان اللهم خفف عنهم في فلسطين اللهم خفف عنهم في فلسطين اللهم خفف عنهم في فلسطين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.